All right, here we are on Niagara Falls Day. So our next poll is going to be in Philadelphia, and that background video is going to be coming out on Wednesday. So make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications so you can get the password and vote for where you want me to go in Philadelphia. Now, for today's video, we're going to be going through 3 different things: power, tight roping, and barrels. Those don't really sound like exciting things, but trust me, it's actually kind of cool. Don't forget to stick around to the end of the video because there's this creepy story we wanted to tell you. And then also too, there are 2 pretty cool facts that may give you some ideas for what you want to be when you grow up. Now for the history of Niagara Falls. The history of Niagara Falls begins about 12,000 years ago when there were horses and sloths and random animals kind of roaming around on grasslands everywhere. There were some serious glaciers that started to melt, and that melted water ended up forming both the Niagara River and this area called the Niagara Escarpment. This is an escarpment, and this is what it means. So as the water continues to flow through, which it's doing even to this day, there's a slight bit of erosion that occurs every single year, about 1 foot a year. What scientists are projecting is that in 50,000 years, there will be no more Niagara Falls because all of the erosion will occur and there'll be no more land left to make a falls. So that sums up the history of Niagara Falls. Now let's talk about that power tightrope barrel thing I was saying before. In our last video, we talked about Niagara Falls and hydroelectric power. Just so you know, this hydroelectric power that comes from Niagara Falls powers about 1.92 million homes. Besides that, Niagara Falls has been generating power since 1881. So you can imagine the number of homes and the number of people that received hydroelectric power and electricity thanks to the Niagara Falls. Just as a fun fact plug, Niagara Falls actually has 8 million visitors per year, which doesn't sound like a ton, but it's actually the entire size of New York City. Imagine everybody in New York City visiting Niagara Falls every single year. Regarding tightrope walking, I could never ever do it, but there were a bunch of people that did it, and there were a bunch of people that tried. The very first person to cross the Niagara Falls on a tightrope did it in 1859. Nobody dared to do it for another 116 years. And the person who ended up doing it was some type of a daredevil guy named Nick Wallenda, I think is what his name was. And in order for him to actually cross the tightrope, the United States and Canada had to approve and agree for him to do it. He needed to bring his passport with him in order to get off the tightrope at the other side and be allowed to cross back from Canada into the United States. In total, 11 people have crossed the Niagara Falls via tightrope since 1859. Believe it or not, 10 men and 1 woman. That's some serious talent. Believe it or not, crossing over the Niagara Falls in a barrel is actually a thing that people attempted. The first time was by a woman named Annie Taylor. She was a teacher. I'm a teacher. Trust and believe, nobody is packing me into a barrel and sending me over the Niagara Falls. But apparently, she wanted to do it. And if you can figure out why, please put it in the comments below so that other people can see. Because when you find out the reason why, you're going to think she's nuts. She was able to be successful in 1901, but a bunch of other people were not so lucky. In total, 5,000 people have gone over the Niagara Falls, and believe me, not many have survived. Okay, creepy story time. Now, in order for me to tell you the creepy story, I have to give you a little bit of background. This all started during the French and Indian War, and I know that doesn't really sound politically correct, but that's just the name of the war. Well, down here on this side, where we are in the United States, the Native Americans ended up joining forces with the British who were here. And King George, back in England, said he wanted this war to continue because he didn't want to lose any of this fresh water that was existing here. He borrowed a bunch of money from the Dutch over in Europe, and the British ended up winning. That's great. But then King George had to pay the money back. So in order to pay the money back, what he basically told the people who ended up winning the war was that, hey, I'm going to tax you. I've got to tax you a ton. The British settlers didn't like that, and guess what? That was the start of the American Revolution. Now, the reason why I'm telling you all of that is because around this time, there were still a lot of people that were exploring. And one of them, his last name was LaSalle. He was coming from Canada and sort of heading towards the south, and he stopped in this area along the way. And while he was exploring, he ended up finding a cave. And when he was exploring, he actually had a Native American helping him sort of search around the area because it was safer for him to have some help than for him to do it completely on his own. And this Native American said to him, "Hey, don't unseal that cave. There's a story behind it, and you definitely don't want anything that's behind that cave." And LaSalle, thinking that he's all cool, said, "I don't care. I want to open the cave." So he ended up doing it. So the way that the legend goes is that once he opened up the cave, he heard a voice telling him, "You don't want to come in here. And if you do come in here, you want to stay on Native American soil, and you don't want to move, and you don't want to do anything new." Well, again, LaSalle, thinking that he was so cool, just walked in the cave, looked all over the place, and turned around and walked out. And a few years later, he decided that he wanted to travel farther south and start a new colony. He ended up making it all the way down to like Mississippi, Louisiana. What ended up happening to him is really sad. His own people ended up murdering him because they didn't like the way that he acted, and then they just left his body there all alone. They didn't even send his body back to his family. They just left him there because they were so upset with him. Now, the legend goes that the reason why that happened is because he didn't heed the warning of the Native American guide that he had with him and just did whatever it was that he wanted. Nowadays, people go up to this cave and take a look inside just to see what's going on. Me and my friend Tom did that, and now I'm a little nervous that I might be cursed. So here are the two fun facts that I wanted to throw out to you. At the park that's right next to the Niagara Falls is a gigantic statue of Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla is credited with discovering 125 inventions, and most of them deal with electricity. And the cool part is he never wanted to actually patent them or make any money off of them. He thought and truly believed that if he leaves it open to the rest of the world, that people would live better, they would all have electricity and a bunch of these other inventions that he has. If you can find a couple of the inventions that he discovered, put them in the comments below, because I think you'd be pretty surprised with what it is that he actually did back in the 1900s. Now, the other fact that I wanted to tell you about is about a place called Love Canal. What happened was a company called the Hooker Chemical Company ended up taking nuclear waste and burying it underneath the ground and not telling anybody about it. The barrels that they buried it in, though, ended up breaking open, and over 700 people ended up dying, and thousands ended up with cancer. It was a terrible mess. But
amazing advocates and lawyers were able to get $20 million for the 1,300 residents who were left at Love Canal. That helped them be able to move and find safe houses to live in. Currently, there are people that still live in the area, and even some new buildings that have popped up. My friend Tom and I drove past. It's pretty creepy.
So there's a thought for you. Becoming an inventor, becoming an advocate to help with environmental concerns, or even working for a company and making sure that they don't cause harm to the environment. Those are some thoughts. But anyway, I'm looking forward to Wednesday and giving you guys the password, and you guys telling me where you want me to go in Philadelphia.